Today, we're discussing our holistic, complete go to market strategy, the 5Bs Framework, and why it's the perfect time for your business to use it right now, especially if you're in a smaller marketing team. Welcome to the B2B Playbook. We built this channel for small B2B marketing teams who want to drive more revenue for their business. Every week, we're showing you how to create more demand for your brand step by step using our 5Bs framework. So if you're time poor, resource strapped, but you still want to make a big impact on your business, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so you don't miss an episode. Welcome back to the B2B Playbook. Today we're discussing our holistic, complete go-to-market strategy, the 5Bs Framework, and why it's the perfect time for your business to use it right now, especially if you're in a smaller marketing team. We are into season 7 of the show. We spent seasons 1 to 5 giving away our 5Bs framework for demand generation, releasing it step by step. Season 6, we answered a lot of FAQs on building and implementing demand generation engines. And now we're going to continue to build on that by looking at demand generation, but also at how it fits into your wider go-to-market strategy. Go back and listen to seasons 1 to 5 if you haven't already to quickly catch you up. Kevin, my co-host, is here. Kevin, can you please let the listeners and viewers know what seasons 1 to 5 quickly were all about?
Of course, George. Seasons 1 to 5, we covered the 5Bs, as George said, and they were be ready, which involved deeply understanding your dream customers, be helpful, how to develop relationships of trust with them online in particular, be seen, how to amplify and focus in your content efforts and your be helpful efforts in the online space, be better, how to optimize the B2B marketing process you've built up until that point, and finally, be the best, the advanced strategies and tactics that the guys at the bigger end of town are using, and how you can bring your 5Bs framework into a holistic, circular framework as we intended.
And Kevin, before we even started this podcast, we basically wrote out what our framework was for what a good holistic marketing engine would look like. And we broke it down into those 5 key components. We mapped out that it would take us roughly 100 episodes to get through. I think it took us a little bit more than that for our first 5 seasons to really nail it out. Then yes, as we said, season 6 was really about answering those FAQs, having other experts on who shared our view or maybe even challenged it slightly. And now we're all the way at over 180 episodes. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to just stop, reflect, zoom out and say, okay, there are some people out there who are saying demand generation shouldn't be responsible for this end-to-end strategy because, traditionally you've got people who are involved in brand, you've got your brand team, and then you've got like your sales, activation, or demand team as well. And people are saying those functions need to be separate because otherwise brand starts getting measured on demand metrics and then budget gets cut for it. So we need to keep these functions separate. Kevin, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that too much for one demand generation person to take on both that role of brand and demand, that sales activation?
Well, I think, George, it's important to bring back the context that you've just covered. When we started talking about the 5Bs, when we laid out the 5Bs framework right at the beginning, even before we started recording the podcast, we set out with the goal in mind of having that go-to-market strategy that was complete and holistic. So it included demand generation. In fact, when we started, we didn't even know the term demand generation. So certainly it wasn't on our minds for it to purely be demand generation. And I think it plays out that way in particular. If you go through the incubator, if you go through all our content and the full framework, it certainly isn't about demand generation. It's about a holistic, complete go-to-market strategy. It covers everything that is especially critical to small marketing teams without a separate brand function. The idea is that we're talking to people who are the sole person who's looking after marketing in a business or a small team that looks after everything that marketing encompasses, whether that's brand, whether that's demand generation. I'm sure a lot of our listeners who work in small businesses will understand that, yes, there's theoretically separation between brand and demand generation and performance marketing even, but at the end of the day, practically, it's one person or a small team who work on all aspects of marketing within that business. Everything has to kind of click together. There is just one marketing budget in effect. And over time that will grow. The teams might separate out. People might specialize down, but really everything should be in touch with each other. It should be one holistic team. Marketing, after all, is one team. And so for most B2B teams with a very small marketing team, they don't have the luxury of having that siloed demand generation, brand, content teams. They really need one unified, practical go-to-market plan that involves everyone in the marketing team, whether that's one person or a couple of people or even the sales team. So the 5Bs really helps you both build brand and drive demand all at the same time, as well as a bunch of other things that we cover, including performance marketing, email marketing, and what have you. All these things ladder up to the 5Bs framework, which is, again, a unified, practical go-to-market plan. And we're talking about this one, as George said, because often something that we come across when people potentially talk about the demand generation program aspects of the incubator. And in some ways, we have framed that in order to get that attention because we realize that a lot of the attention is around demand generation. And that is a better way for people to understand our course and to come into our sphere of content and to understand how it connects with other areas of marketing. But certainly we didn't set out for the 5Bs to just be demand generation.
And Kevin, that's not to say that when you're executing the 5Bs that you're both trying to drive brand and demand at the same time. I mean, the long and the short of it shows us that, we have the best outcomes when you handle those activities separately. We're just talking about, let's use some practical frameworks. So brand and demand aren't completely separate in terms of who owns it. Because again, the teams that we speak to largely don't have the luxury of having a separate brand and demand team. So we need to look for actual practical frameworks that don't mesh the two in its execution, but very clearly allow you to see when you do activities, which one it fits into and how they connect with each other. So for example, the 5 stages of awareness, Kevin, that's a framework that we're huge advocates of. And the reason that we love it is because it effectively looks at mapping out the buying journey through their 5 stages of awareness. The idea that someone is unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and most aware. Your brand activities are largely going to that unaware and that problem aware audience. Where you're doing all those things, you're trying to connect the problem that someone is having with your brand, with your solution. So that category entry point, in the same way that if I spill something on my shirt right now, I think of Rinso or whatever laundry detergent it is that I use. That's what I think of straight away. That's what we're really trying to do when we're mapping out that problem aware situation. And then when someone's in that solution aware, product aware, most aware stage, well, that's when we have content that is probably more likely to be around that demand sales activation content, where we're helping people evaluate different solutions, show them that we are the logical choice for them. And a simple framework like that makes you think, have I ticked off that unaware and problem aware content or the unaware and problem aware product marketing to make sure that we're doing those things? You're going to measure those a little bit differently, but then you're also looking at what about solution aware, product aware, most aware. And so we've got one framework and it's helping us as a small team with limited resources do 2 things. They're not 2 completely different sections of marketing. And even if they are, because you're a larger organization, and we do have larger organizations come through the B2B incubator, you can see where brand and demand intersects and what that really looks like too.
And I think what's really important is that with the 5Bs framework, remember that be ready stage where you're looking at your ICP, where you're looking at your dream customers. That is critical to a business. You're aligning on things like the brand guidelines. You're aligning on things like the brand identity. And you're aligning on the people that you're ultimately targeting, whether that's in branding, whether that's in demand generation, whether that's in performance marketing, right at the end of the funnel. If you've gone through the 5Bs framework from the beginning to the end, then every team in the marketing function of the business should be aligned on those really fundamental things and foundational things so that you're all pulling in the right direction, in the same direction, importantly, to help each other improve the performance. So really, ultimately, yes, you might be measuring the performance in the branding team and the demand generation team in a big organization on different metrics, different results, different activities altogether. But at the end of the day, they should be impacting the same group of people, the same ICPs, the same target audience that you're going after with the same messaging, tone of voice and things like that, which you've all covered in that Be Ready stage. And that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to get that alignment across the board. And in particular, because those small teams or the teams that these teams over time, they can't afford to have those disjointed strategies. And that's why it's really important and why the 5Bs matters, particularly to small teams, because there's limited resources to go off. There's one or a few people looking after marketing and they're working very quickly on the fly. They can't afford to do things again and again and have different results when they look at it through a branding lens, when they look at it through a demand gen lens. Hopefully you can do the same work that you would require for all these different functions within marketing all in the one go when you do be ready, and then be able to see where the intersections are and reuse some of that work in other areas and other activities as you get to them. And then everything will click together, whether that's brand, demand, even product marketing if you're in a SaaS business and the like. All that will hopefully start to work together because, again, often you have very limited resources. Even in a bigger organization, we've seen plenty of small teams running the marketing department. Maybe it's a sales heavy organization with only a few people in the marketing team. One person might be more demand gen heavy, one person might be more brand heavy, but they're working so closely together that they might as well be that same function. And so they need that one practical framework to work together on. And that's exactly what the 5Bs help you do. They focus in your limited resources on the highest impact activities. Make sure you don't do the same things twice. Build a brand that buyers trust across the different marketing functions, while at the same time creating and capturing demand and the brand and everything else, and creating efficiencies across marketing and sales activities as well. So we talked a lot about sales and marketing alignment. These principles that we talk about in the 5Bs will help you better align with the sales team as well.
It makes it a very practical framework and a very practical toolkit, because the theory is lovely, but we need frameworks, things to help us action this. And that's what the 5Bs is all about, isn't it, Kevin? It's about actually giving you that framework. And if you are that demand generation marketer in a larger team, we are seeing a lot of demand gen marketers in large teams kind of acting as that connector between performance, between brand, between content, because they end up being responsible for like a certain number as well. So it is inherently fallen upon them to make sure, are we getting the most out of each of our different sections within marketing, so the marketing department doesn't become siloed from one another. And that's why it's in their interest as well to get a framework like this together, so we can see, is everyone doing their right job, so we can come together and have the most impact together as possible. And then, as you've already said, Kevin, on the smaller end of town, even if you have a large sales team, if you're a small marketing department, it's about making sure that we're using that limited time, energy, and resources on executing what we need to. And that's what the framework is all about. So in terms of how we use the 5Bs to create that full motion for marketing end to end, we've already touched on be ready and how you do that, getting that ideal customer profile down, getting your messaging down, getting your positioning perfect. That is absolutely critical downstream. That's something that should be shared with all your marketing teams. It should be shared with your sales team, and leaders should be brought into that as well. I'd really defining what are our next best segments for us to really get into as a business, who are our best customers, and where do we want to put our limited time, energy, and resources. So that's a really crucial step. What about the next one, Kev? Be helpful.
Well, Be Helpful then was all about building organic authority and customer relationships with the content that you create and building that community around your brand and being really helpful with your content in order to do that, particularly in the online space where there's a lot of noise now and you really have to cut through that with really helpful and relevant content. And we used all the research that you've done and all the information that you've collected in Be Ready stage to really inform the content that you go to market with. And in this stage, it's obviously a very strong branding play for a lot of the content that you're going to put out there. It's got to be aligned with the messaging that you determined in Be Ready. It's got to be aligned with the positioning that you determined would be perfect for your business in Be Ready. It's again showing why it's so critical for everything downstream to have that Be Ready stage ready, because now in Be Helpful, your branding team might be working on big go-to-market campaigns that are very much about the brand, but still have that messaging that you're then aligned to when you go into the deeper content and the helpful content. You keep circling back on those key themes to ladder up to the branding team's efforts in your demand gen activities or in your content activities. And then that will help build the inbound engine. So the topmost layer in your content or your branding activities might be quite generic, but they have the messaging hooks that then pull those users that are relevant to you into your next layer of helpful content, and so on and so forth down into be seen as well. So be helpful. It's really the first practical step of seeing some of that come to light in a practical way in your content. But certainly, again, it relies on that connection with the work that you've done in getting the messaging right and getting all that foundational stuff done in Be Ready so that you can be completely aligned with your branding team and your demand gen efforts.
I mean, at the end of the day, Kev, that be helpful stage, what we're trying to do, it's about making sure that people think of you at the right time when that time comes, and making sure that they trust us enough to select us over the incumbent or over the competition. And it's exactly why we call it be helpful, because B2B, it's so much fundamentally built on relationships. And what's a great way to make a friend in real life? Be it a friend, be it a spouse, whatever it is, it all starts with like some kind of reciprocity, like helping someone when they're in need. Like that's where real, I suppose, relationships are born. And that's why we call it be helpful, because I think it changes that perception where it's not just content for content's sake. It's let's really build trust with our ideal customers before they even buy from us, before we have a transaction, before we ask for something back. Let's build that trust with each other. And then I think the way you create content, the way that you map their buying journey, the way that you help them through that journey takes a completely different spin and has a really different angle on it.
Yeah, 100%. Be helpful is such an important and crucial cornerstone to the 5Bs framework. Even though it's really centered in Be Ready in the work that you've done there, Be Helpful is really the first place that the wider world, the outer world, will see your efforts come to light. And so, really important to have that aligned. And that's why it's such a crucial part of the 5Bs framework and in building that holistic, full go to market motion.
Okay, then next we have the third B in our 5Bs framework, which is be seen. And that's all once we've put the foundations of be ready and be helpful in place, meaning like we've really deeply understood our segment. We've uncovered what their buying journey looks like. We started to answer all the potential questions that they will have in Be Helpful and maps that buying journey. And we're building trust with them as well. Be Seen is about how do we make sure that people are actually seeing this amazing content that we're putting together or this amazing product marketing that we're putting together? And that's what that's all about. It's about amplifying your reach. So how can you do that? Well, there's a ton of different ways to make sure that more people see your content. You have paid advertising on the one side. You have, LinkedIn ads. You've got Meta appearing on Google ads. You've got native advertising. You've got traditional stuff like billboards and newspapers and, newsletters. There's no reason why any of that stuff isn't something you should be looking at too. These are all different ways that you can just amplify your reach to your dream customers. But it all circles back, Kevin, to be ready when ideally we've asked our dream customers, hey, where is it that you hang out online and offline? So we know that we're pushing into the right channels, into the right events, into the right newsletters. That's what Be Seen is all about. It's being seen not just by everyone, but where your dream customers are hanging out. And then we go one layer deeper and we say, okay, look, yes, we all have limited time, energy, and resources. We can't afford to just blast our market with our message because it's too expensive. So we start to look at things like account-based marketing and say, hey, can we spend some of our resources in a more efficient way on people who are more likely in market now and have started engaging with our brand? And that's what we look at with account-based marketing too, is really getting people who are more likely to be in market, who have some interaction with our brand, and seeing how we can help get them across the line.
But you can see here, listeners, these things will only be impactful, will only be effective if you had that Be Ready stuff done and you have it done right and you're fully aligned with your branding team's efforts as well. If the branding team is going to market with a certain look and feel or messaging that isn't totally aligned with how you're going to market with your ABM efforts or your paid advertising efforts, there's going to be a disconnect between the two and you're not going to be amplifying each other's efforts. People will see a completely different way of how your brand is voiced, how your brand appears on the channels that they're looking at, you generally. and they will feel a sense of disconnect, unfamiliarity, and they will be less likely to interact with the information that you're putting out there. But hopefully, if you're on the same page as your branding team, if you've done that work and you're using the same ICP, same messaging, same positioning as the branding team is using from that Be Ready stage, then you've got a group of potential customers who are a lot warmer, who are a lot more likely to say, hey, I recognize these guys. I trust their content from the Be Helpful stage. Let's have a look at what they're offering. Let's have a look at what else they can offer me in terms of content or even services and products, because I trust them as a brand and I recognize their brand right away.
I mean, Kev, we practice what we preach, right? I mean, we've been sharing our 5Bs framework so openly. We've been giving so much away for such a long period of time. And when we speak to people who want to join our incubator, I mean, they trust us inherently already because there's a good chance that they've been following us for at least a year, 18 months, and they'll say, hey, actually, I came across you first on this episode, and the way that you spoke about this really helped me, and I wanted to share that with you. And that happens all the time to us. And it happens to the businesses that we consult into as well. We love to practice what we preach. Be seen is a very important aspect to it because it's making sure that people actually consume and see that really helpful content that you're putting out there.
And then you move on to Be Better Listeners. In that stage, that fourth B, we look at optimizing your operations. Here, we might look at things like improving your reporting, improving how your data is pulled, maybe a bit of A/B testing, testing new channels that you could potentially add and scale your processes that you've already built in. Maybe it's more about community engagement. Maybe it's more about life cycle marketing. But all these different things that we talked about in that season, they still come back to that analysis of who is your ideal customers, what does the ICPs look like in the buying committee for those ideal customers, all that Be Ready work. You kind of loop back and look at the processes that you've built up until that point and say, am I actually hitting these ICPs? Am I staying true to the Be Ready stage research? Does that research need to be updated in itself? And still, it's a loop back to that so that you're constantly aligning yourself in the marketing function, wherever you are in that marketing practice, back to the same Be Ready stage, back to what everyone else is pushing towards within the organization, so that you can continue to build on the efforts of everyone else in the team. Again, efficiency and effectiveness in limited resource situations.
And then, Kev, finally, we have Be the Best, which is our last and final B of the 5Bs framework, which is how you just keep iterating on this whole engine. And this is not like a linear process. It's more of a flywheel. Once you start at Be Ready, you work your way through to Be Ready, Be Helpful, Be Seen, Be Better. Now, Be the Best is about like, let's keep spinning that wheel with whatever else it is that is really new out there that's going to help us make that whole thing spin faster. Now, lately, Kevin, that's probably around AI, like is a big piece of that conversation. How can we start to use AI to really drive a lot of this process further? I think something we're probably going to cover in this season a little bit more and share how we're using it as well. But that's really what Be the Best is at its core, is what else are we doing out there outside of those fundamental marketing principles that's helping us get an edge? And that's what we look at in that 5B, that final B of our 5Bs framework.
Well, there you go, listeners. That is how you can use the 5Bs framework to create a full go-to-market motion. You can see there's so much overlap, but really what the framework does is help you align all the different marketing functions, whether that's branding, whether that's demand generation, whether that's performance marketing or content marketing even. Make sure that everyone's seeing from the same hymn sheet, same basic foundation of what the messaging is, what the brand should be, and drive towards the same ideal customer or ideal customer base. All right, listeners, key takeaways for this episode. Brand and demand gen can't be two separate entities in small marketing teams. We know that they're often one and the same. So we need frameworks to help us think about how they can work together and much more efficiently to utilize the limited resources that those teams have. The 5Bs framework is a holistic and evergreen go-to-market strategy. It's not just demand gen. And that's exactly how we built it right from the beginning. And finally, small teams can use it to punch above their weight, building both demand and revenue engines simultaneously.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, listeners and viewers, as always, you can find links to everything that we discussed in the show notes. We're so grateful that each week more and more marketers tune in every Monday to the B2B Playbook. If we could ask one thing, it would be to pass the show on to someone who you think would get value from it. Also, check us out on YouTube. It's a huge help to us and we'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, viewers. Take care and catch you next week.
Thank you, George. Thank you, listeners and viewers. Take care and catch you all next week.